Innovation is rare in the PC case market. Designs often merely check off a feature list, experimenting primarily with looks rather than features. It's rare for manufacturers to try something radically outside the norm. Deepcool are one of those who do push the boundaries, sometimes a little, sometimes a lot. And even when it doesn't quite work out, they're still designs well worth talking about. Hi, this is Tim for Vortez.net, and today we're looking at the Gamerstorm New Ark 90 PC case by Deepcool. Part of the wider Gamerstorm range, this case is unsurprisingly marketed towards gamers with a taste for the unconventional. Deepcool have previously released some striking designs, the most well known of which are the Tri-Stellar and newer Quad-Stellar models. The New Ark 90 returns to a more conventional layout, accommodating motherboards with form factor up to e-atx, but isn't above diverging starkly from the conventional. In the New Ark 90's case, Deepcool have taken the step of integrating a CPU liquid cooling system into the chassis itself, sidestepping the need for a standard CPU cooler. In theory, this should also mean high-performance cooling right out of the box as well, but that's not the only feature that defines the chassis. Aesthetics, airflow and lighting all see a fresh twist in the Ark 90, from removable panels to small internal layout tweaks that specifically accommodate LED lighting strips. And of course, tempered glass makes an appearance, now officially as ubiquitous as RGB LEDs in enthusiast-grade cases. All that being said, the Gamerstorm New Ark 90 needs to do its level best to live up to a decidedly premium price. In the US, it hits the market with an MSRP of $299 excluding taxes, whilst UK punters will need to fork over £299 including VAT. That's the sort of money you'd spend on the flagship of their competitors. And Deepcool's status as a lesser known brand means that they're immediately faced with an uphill battle. The question is, can they pull it off? Let's start with the front of the case. And immediately, the New Ark 90 sets itself apart from the competition. The case is split into two clear sections, reflected in the asymmetric front, and sitting between them is a thin vertical tube that you might think is just a bit of flare. In fact, it's a part of the integrated water cooling, allowing you to see the liquid as it flows through the system. RGB lighting within the case also shines through this tube, increasing the case's overall illumination and bringing an additional level of aesthetic customization. The larger of the two chassis sections has a detachable tempered glass fascia, behind which there is a removable plastic panel. Removing this panel reveals space for mounting three optional 120mm fans, with no fans installed here in its default configuration. Even were fans installed, there's not much ventilation to exploit and no dust filter. In fact, this could potentially be a weakness due to dust ingress. These vents are the only means through which air can be drawn into the case. On the face of it, that seems like an oversight. The front I/O panel, located at the right-hand side of the top of the case, features most of the connectivity you should expect. Two USB 3.0 ports, but no USB 3.1, headphone and microphone jacks, large power button, and an activity LED. The New Ark 90 also incorporates an LED lighting controller. 3 buttons, discreetly located near the front I/O, control the LED lighting mode, brightness, and the speed of the breathing effect mode if selected. That seems like a fairly marginal choice for functionality, when something like a fan controller might be more appropriate. A reason why it's necessary is that the New Ark 90 isn't compatible with other third-party lighting systems, and that also means no software control for the lighting. In a similar manner to that of the front panel, both the top tempered glass and plastic panel below can be removed. Here you can access a further 3 optional 120mm fan positions, although again, venting here is limited. Aesthetically, the lines are sharp and clean, and offer scope for additional modding. But even straight out of the box, it's a striking case. Unsurprisingly, given the focus on RGB lighting, the side panel of the case is entirely comprised of tempered glass, 1mm thick. Fixed in place with 4 thumb screws, it offers an unobstructed view into the PC's interior. In contrast, the other side features just a steel panel, with some venting cut out. Dubbed Dragon Scale by Deepcool, they facilitate airflow through the pre-installed radiator and out the case. So, let's look at the New Ark 90 without any side panels. Superficially, the case follows a conventional ATX layout for motherboard and components, but some elements set it apart. The most obvious are the side-mounted radiator and optional vertical mount for the graphics card, but other small tweaks are also present. As we mentioned, the New Ark 90 can accommodate motherboards up to e-atx and 8 horizontally mounted PCI Express cards. There's also plenty of space for components and cable routing in general, although there are a few things you'll want to keep in mind. The New Ark 90 is a full tower case, but what does that mean in terms of its exterior dimensions? Well, it's 545mm tall, 232mm wide, and 530mm long. That's large enough to dominate any room. When viewed from the left, the entire PSU area is sectioned off, effectively inaccessible from this side. To access it, you instead have to remove the opposite side panel, but at that point, it's easy to deal with. The power supply sits in its standard position at the bottom of the case, on 4 rubber pads that dampen any vibration caused by the PSU's fans. Dust-filtered venting for the PSU fan is available at the bottom of the case, so there should be few worries with airflow in this specific section. LED lighting is available through the PSU cover's windows, illuminating the Gamerstorm logo. Cables from the PSU or behind the motherboard tray can pass through rubber grommets in the cover if desired. The PSU cover pulls triple duty in this design. While partially hiding the PSU, it also offers a toolless mounting position for an SSD and the point at which you can install a vertically mounted video card. The SSD needs to be screwed into a sled before being clipped in, held in place by a single thumb screw. When it comes to vertically mounting a graphics card, however, things get a little tricky. Rather than a universal mounting option, the screw positions call for the use of Deepcool's PEC 300 mounting kit, which isn't included but is compatible with the Quadstellar and Genome series cases. Generic riser cable solutions will not fit. Simply put, there's not enough clearance between the bottom of the card's PCI Express connector and the PSU shroud to accommodate a standard cable. Furthermore, spacing between the mounting kit standoffs is narrower than a standard riser cable. That said, a proper mounting kit does help make the card more stable by supporting it in 2 sides rather than just the one. Purpose-made riser solutions are nothing new. Cooler Master have a similar design for their Masterbox case series, for instance. However, we would have liked to see Deepcool provide a mounting point for the graphics card without a riser cable, allowing us to install our own riser cable should we desire to, and keeping costs down a little bit. If you were to go down the DIY route, a riser cable with 90-degree connector might do the job. Unfortunately, that would mean that the card is only supported by its PCI Express bracket. And so with reservations expressed, we should finish by noting that the 2 vertical slots and 8 horizontal PCI Express slots have removable ventilated covers rather than punch-out slots, each with thumb screws. Thumb screws for the 8 main slots are hidden by a blanking plate on the rear. Acting as the only chassis-mounted cooling fan, a 140mm 4-pin PWM exhaust fan is mounted at the rear. Capable of up to 1800 RPM, it also features RGB LED lighting. Optionally, up to 3 120mm fans can be installed at the top as additional exhaust, should it be necessary. As we mentioned, the New Ark 90's most surprising feature is the integration of Deepcool's Captain Series 280mm liquid CPU cooler into the chassis. But that's not all. The cooler's radiator is mounted parallel and alongside the motherboard rather than bolted to the chassis, giving full view to the RGB LED fans through the tempered glass side panel. Prior to shipping, Deepcool arranges all the cables and installs the radiator in place. The water block is attached to a plastic bracket that secures it to the motherboard tray, helping to prevent accidental damage in transit. Of course, you'll need to remove the bracket prior to installing your motherboard. This attention to detail means that installing a system is both simple and has a clean finish with only minor amounts of hassle. The pump and water block is installed over the CPU and is compatible with most Intel and AMD sockets including LGA 1151, LGA 2011 and AM4. It is not, however, compatible with AMD's Threadripper specific TR4 socket. All the accessories necessary to get you up and running, including thermal paste, is supplied with the case. In some instances it will be a tight fit. Our Intel system build with LGA 1155 was notably so, made difficult by short tubing on the cooler. But generally, it shouldn't be a hassle if care is taken. It would have been nice to see Deepcool bundle black anodized mounting kits to go with the black water block, but even so, the final result looks great. When it comes to storage, the New Ark 90 is amply covered without being exactly generous. Primary storage in the form of 3 trays for 3.5-inch drives is located at the front and requires removal of the front panel to access. Drives are screwed into each tray rather than being toollessly clipped in. It's also noteworthy that the lowest 140mm fan is in fact mounted to the hard drive cage and not the 280mm radiator. This provides some additional cooling for the hard drives installed in the cage, but is also something of a compromise for aesthetic reasons to continue the clean lines of the internal lighting. It would be more efficient to have the fan mounted in such a way that air is blown over the drives, either by mounting in a different position or flipping orientation, but clearly that would be much less attractive to look at. In addition to the SSD mount on the PSU cover, 2 mounting points behind the motherboard tray are also available for 2.5-inch drives. They use the same bracket system, but in this case keep them well out of sight. Installing an air cooler into the New Ark 90 somewhat defeats the purpose, but if you're adamant, you can fit coolers over 180mm in height. Horizontally mounted graphics cards are limited to 320mm in length, which is sufficient for most GPUs on the market today. However, when mounted vertically, it's possible to accommodate cards up to 430mm in length, as there are now no new obstructions. Cable management options for the New Ark 90 are pretty good. 20mm of space is available behind the motherboard tray, and holes in the tray are by and large properly grommeted to keep it looking clean. Excess cables can be stored behind the tray or in a pinch in the PSU section. A fan hub also helps to manage wiring, with a single 4-pin PWM line running to the motherboard for software control. If additional water cooling is required, you will need to be very careful with how you choose to spec it out. Placing Radon fans in the front could quickly foul against the pre-installed solution, while the top is effectively limited to slim radiators. We'd also judge that in this position you're probably better advised to go for a 240mm rather than 360mm radiator, once again due to potential to foul on a pre-installed solution. So let's sum up our thoughts on the Deepcool Gamerstorm New Ark 90. Immediately it's clear that the case is striking, and for many customers that will be enough to clear the first purchase hurdle. It's sharp, elegant, and has just enough exterior lighting to be stylish rather than garish. The vertical tube is a nice touch. It has no bearing on functionality, but it is a feature available nowhere else. Other aspects of the case design are well executed from an aesthetic point of view. Mounting the radiator parallel to the motherboard is a stroke of genius, that is, so long as you have some attractive RGB fans. Luckily the ones Deepcool provide are up to the task, but variants from some other brands, mentioning no names, wouldn't go down nearly as well. No, the issues with the New Ark 90 are practicalities rather than aesthetics. Early on we identified the issue of dust ingress due to the lack of air filtering. Even if fans are not mounted in the front, negative internal pressure means that air will be drawn in through these vents, causing the accumulation of dust inside your case. You can retrofit some filters, but that's far from ideal. Internal airflow in general will be low and not streamlined, which could be a problem for toasty components such as the GPU and NVMe SSDs. Not only that, getting continuous airflow over these components could be a struggle. You can also throw away the possibility of push-pull cooling configurations. The way the radiator is mounted makes it more stress than it's worth. The vertical GPU mounting system is another bugbear, where better support for more generic solutions could be possible. Thankfully, Deepcool do offer a mounting kit, but without that, using this functionality is an exercise in frustration. The mounting kit is available from Amazon for the price of $24.99. And then there's the issue of no Threadripper support. Of course, AMD's Threadripper platform makes up only a fraction of even the enthusiast market, but one might expect more from a £300 case. No front panel fan controller is a disappointment, but the solution of a hub with PWM connection isn't a poor compromise. Lack of support for third-party lighting, however, may be more of a sticking point, despite the excellent quality and brightness of the pre-installed lighting options. Now, it may sound like we're being a little harsh here, and in truth we probably are, on balance. The key selling point for the New Ark 90 is out-of-the-box aesthetics, which you know, long before you order, will be perfect for what you have planned. They're easy to fall in love with, especially if you have a GPU and motherboard you want to properly show off. The price also doesn't seem that bad if you consider that the Deepcool capped-in 280mm water cooling system would set you back at least £100 when purchased alone. Suddenly, it's not competing with £300 cases, but combinations of cases and coolers worth that amount. That makes a big difference. And so, not for the first time, we give the Deepcool Gamerstorm New Ark 90 qualified approval. A few niggling issues mean we can't give it wholehearted support, but those who fall in love with the aesthetic and can be satisfied with suboptimal airflow might have finally found the unique case they've always wanted. If you have any queries or questions about this review, please put them in the comments below. You can find more reviews of cases and components at Vortez.net. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.